Warning, this episode will be discussing extremely dark themes that include different types of violence and death. Some people might find these topics distressing. This podcast is not made for children. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Full of Paranormal B.S.
I'm Jess, and I'm a skeptic.
I'm Colin, and I'm a believer.
I'm Bree, and I'm the producer. And so sorry I'm late with this, but I finally found the perfect location for you two.
Sweet. Where are we going?
It's this gorgeous home that sits on 18 acres of land.
Sounds promising.
Right? It has the cutest name, too. Fox Hollow Farm.
Wait, isn't that the place where that asshole Herb Baumeister murdered numerous men?
I didn't know anything about that. But a fall wedding would be so beautiful there.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone wants a wedding at a place where people say the ghost of said asshole haunts the ground still and is absolutely terrorizing the new tenants.
Ooh. But it has a cool indoor swimming pool.
Yep, where creepy mannequins were set up so Herb could pretend that people actually liked him.
Booyah!
Did I mention it's a Tudor-style house?
Great! Should we also talk about the woods that have human remains scattered everywhere?
Come on, guys. We can make this work.
No!
Nope, not really.
Not
This place is
happening.
too dark.
Too creepy, too scary.
No.
Did I mention the owners make a great continental breakfast?
Well,
You know, I am kind of hungry.
I could go for some breakfast.
Pancakes. You want some pancakes?
Yeah, with some bacon on the side.
Ooh.
Join us as we explore Fox Hollow Farm.
Where a deranged lunatic took the lives of countless men.
Also, where victims and entities are said to still linger.
Now let's turn on the spirit box and try to communicate with Herb Baumeister, just so we can tell that piece of shit to fuck off.
Yay!
Yay!
I hate that guy
Oh,
so much.
I really do. I hate him so much. What an
Right?
asshole.
Such a dick.
The story of Fox Hollow Farm begins with what appeared to be an ordinary property in the Indiana countryside. Located just outside Indianapolis, the farm gained national attention in the mid-1990s after authorities uncovered one of the state's largest serial murder investigations. The property was once owned by Herb Baumeister, who is believed to have lured dozens of men to the farm before killing them. Human remains were discovered scattered across the property, and many victims have only recently been identified through advances in forensic DNA technology. As the years passed, a different kind of story began to emerge. Paranormal investigators, psychics, and visitors have reported hearing unexplained voices, seeing shadowy figures, and experiencing an overwhelming feeling that they were not alone on the property. Today, Fox Hollow Farm is considered one of the most haunted locations in Indiana. So the question remains, is Fox Hollow Farm truly haunted, or have the echoes of its tragic past become impossible to leave behind? Is there anything you would like to say before I open the gates to Fox Hollow Farm?
Yeah. Actually, there is something. Colin and I both know that with Fox Hollow Farm, there is a lot of talk about it in the true crime community right now, especially because it's kind of an ongoing case. We just want you guys to know that for this episode, we are strictly focusing on the haunted aspects of Fox Hollow Farm. We will be discussing a little bit about the true crime. Colin and I have both watched the Hulu series that so many people are watching because they just came back with a return to Fox Hollow.
Jess and I have the utmost respect for the sensitive subject matter in this particular episode, but we tend to lean on humor a lot in this show, especially when it comes to the darker topics, and our intent is to never be malicious or insensitive. Humor is how we cope. If this particular brand of coping is not for you, then please join us in our next episode and feel free to listen to some of our past episodes.
Fox Hollow Farm has earned a reputation as one of the most haunted private homes in America. Do you think that reputation comes from the reported paranormal activity or from the horrific history?
I think it comes from both. As we know, so Rob and Vicky Graves, they're on record as stating that when they purchased the property, they were made aware of what had happened on the property. They didn't think anything about it. They completely dismissed the paranormal claims in the beginning. Rob and Vicky Graves, they've both sat there and talked about kind of strange things that sort of happened, but they dismissed them. Like they were completely non-believers. You also have Rob buying things that belong to Herb online. It's possible these things have some sort of attachment, but when you have investigators come out to this location, look, they know the history. I don't see how not knowing the history cannot somehow be influenced. I think it's next to impossible to not know the history. Rob has also said to give an hour to an hour and a half tour of the property, and he already gives you details of things that have already happened. So I think it's already a huge influence. So during this process, right, of doing all of this research, there was a book that I had picked up called Fox Hollow Farm by Gavin Lee. Gavin Lee, he actually put his email in the book, and I sent him an email to say, hey, maybe I could kind of get some stuff from him. And I've had fantastic conversations with this man. Gavin Lee, first off, thank you so much for responding and chatting with me about Fox Hollow Farm. I did want to say, through our email correspondence, he gave this really interesting quote, something that really stood out to me. So this is from Gavin Lee. He says, Fox Hollow Farm is not frightening simply because people say it is haunted. It is frightening because the claims seem to sit directly on top of something deeply real and deeply human.
That's creepy.
It's creepy, but it still like resonated within me a little bit where I was just like, and Gavin has also told me in emails like he's never been to Fox Hollow Farm itself. Obviously, he did a lot of research into writing his book, but everything that he was speaking about, it's all about how people feel because there is this perception of Fox Hollow Farm. And like I said, I think that it comes from the reputation of the history of it and also the reputation of what people have actually responded to. And also, really quickly, I know I was about to stop, but I have to say this. Can we all just laugh at the fact, because Robert himself laughs at it. His name is Robert Graves and he goes by Rob Graves. Look, that is the perfect drag king name, if ever. And I want them on Dragula next season. Done. Out. Drop the mic.
With that, are you ready for the biggest shock of all season?
I am on the edge of my seat currently.
I agree with you.
That is not what I thought you were going to say. I literally thought you were going to say, it's not haunted.
Take it in. Take a moment. Take it in.
Okay.
No, I also agree that it relies on both. Without the history, the true crime of it all, I feel like the paranormal claims would probably be easily dismissed, maybe. But then without the paranormal reports, the property would just be looked at a true crime site. It's that reputation. You can't have one without the other. You need both of those.
Yeah, it goes hand in hand, I think.
So I think the reputation thrives on both the history and the reported paranormal activity.
Yeah, and look, I will say that, we kind of get into this a little bit later, so I won't delve too much into it now, but I've always had this interesting thought of when we have these huge serial killers in America, are their homes, that some have not been knocked down, because we know that some have, but are their homes haunted? These crimes that took place inside of their homes, are they haunted or is it just Fox Hollow Farm? It's something I've always wondered.
It's an interesting thing to wonder, but I don't think paranormal claims have been made on every true crime site on the planet.
True. Yeah. No, very true.
But I think the magnitude of the history has a part in it too.
Yes.
Because we're not talking about just a one-off murder here. We're talking about countless victims. I mean, I feel like they're still trying to figure out how many victims were on the property.
Yeah. And the span of time. And that's the other thing is that, as we've all heard before, to me, this case was so underlining because he wasn't a Gacy, he wasn't a Dahmer or anything such as that. And it went kind of under the radar for quite some time. And that also kind of makes me think that kind of when did these paranormal claims, was it just with the Graves? It was an abandoned house after Baumeister, so I've always wondered, when did this stuff kind of start?
I think it started with the Graves. I don't think I remember finding any reports before that, if I'm being honest. I feel like the majority of the paranormal stories that have come from this location came from the Graves.
Yeah.
Coolest last name, man.
I know. It's really funny to watch Rob kind of make own jokes about it.
Yeah, how he says, like, if you say his name fast enough, it just sounds like he's robbing graves.
Yeah, so funny. I love it.
Many visitors describe feeling watched or experiencing an overwhelming sense of dread before anything unusual happens. Do you think certain places can genuinely feel different, or is it our brains simply responding to the environment?
Okay, so when it comes to specifically Fox Hollow, I can understand why it would cause that feeling. You know, if you're standing on a property that has that kind of heavy history, I feel like it's completely natural to kind of feel that shift in the air. Now, talking from not a paranormal standpoint, but a scientific and psychological one, I think that feeling of dread that people get on the property, I feel like it's a combination of basically invisible environmental factors and just a natural survival instinct, and not so much like a supernatural energy.
Interesting choice of words for survival instinct on this particular property.
If you were to go to a location that you know so many people were killed at, wouldn't that just automatically kind of make you a little hyper vigilant and maybe cause a little anxiety? You know, I can't imagine that it feels, I mean, other than for the graves, I can't imagine that it feels like a safe place when you know the history behind it. Like the graves and their family, they still swim in that pool. I
Oh, I
can't
know.
imagine
I
how they frickin' do
know.
that. Cannot imagine, because I feel like my natural instinct, if I was there knowing that
Yeah.
it said Herb killed most of his victims in the pool, my survival instinct would be like, nope, don't go in there. Don't go in there. Nope.
But also to take that further for you, I did think to myself, the pool hose that they have there, correct? When we were watching Ghost Adventures, they said it was the original one. I was like, okay, I doubt that. No, it is. I did some research on that. It is the original pool hose that Herb used to choke some victims that is still used in that pool.
Has that been proven, though, that he used that
Yes.
pool hose?
That was, I mean, according to testimony from Mr. Goodyear, yes, that
Mm,
was, but that's the
that
only
guy.
testimony that we have.
I feel like you have to take that with a grain of salt then,
True, true.
because I have opinions about that.
Yeah.
But when it comes to this feeling of dread, it makes sense. Like if you take out all of the paranormal aspects, it still makes sense. And to help support my point, I am going to read this quote from this article I came across on vice.com, and it's titled "The Real Reason Old Buildings Feel Haunted. It's Not Ghosts." And it's by Ashley Fike, and it was
I'm sorry,
written,
that's really funny.
yeah, and it was published 2026 in May. So she says, you walk into an old building and something feels off. You can't explain it. You're agitated, unsettled, maybe a little on edge, and there's no obvious reason for any of it. New research published in Frontiers in Behavioral Neuroscience suggests the reason might be simpler than anyone wants to admit. The culprit, according to researchers at MacEwan, MacEwan University and the University of Alberta, is infrasound, very low frequency sound, below 20 hertz, that the human ear can't actually detect. It comes from aging pipes, ventilation systems, traffic, and industrial machinery. It's essentially everywhere, and most people have no idea that they're being exposed to it.
So fear frequency.
So, yeah, the fear frequency, which I talked
Interesting.
about in Waverly.
Waverly. Yeah.
But a lot of the things I listed, Fox Hollow has, especially, I think, especially when it comes to that pool pump. But we can discuss that later because we're going to get
Just
way
the pool
more
in
into the pool of
general.
it all. Yeah. Okay. So, like I was saying earlier, having this knowledge of the property and all of the horrendous crimes that happened there, I feel like can naturally bring up a lot of hypervigilance and anxiety. I think based on this article I read from silverliningrecovery.com, there was this little post they did talking about, why do I feel like someone is watching me? And it says that persistent feeling of being watched, followed, or unsafe, especially when there's no actual threats, can be deeply uncomfortable. For some, it happens occasionally. For others, it's a daily struggle. This experience isn't necessarily paranoia or a sign of something serious like psychosis. Instead, it can often be traced back to anxiety, especially when you're in a heightened state of alertness known as hypervigilance. This is your brain's way of trying to protect you, but sometimes it goes into overdrive. And I feel like being in that situation where you're
Yeah.
on that property, knowing all those people were killed, knowing all those people died horribly, without you wanting to be that way or not, I feel like it's just going to naturally give you that survival instinct, that level of hypervigilance and anxiety. It's going to be there, which I feel like can cause that feeling of dread and that feeling like somebody, is watching you. I can understand why somebody would experience that and be like, it's another presence. That doesn't necessarily mean that it is.
I'm going to rebuttal your Tuttle. I agree with you in a certain sense, but I guess for me in that location, knowing that Herb is no longer among the living, I don't know if my hypervigilance would feel like, this kind of need to get out of there, because to me, it's not like, there's an active person on the property. Just in also the sense, like you had asked earlier about kind of going to these locations where horrible things have happened. At Gettysburg, have frequented Gettysburg numerous times, but I've never really had that feeling of anxiety even knowing what had happened there. But I also do say I think it could be a little different, because there's one where there's fear of obviously a war, and then there's also fear of murder. You know what I'm saying? So I do think there are two different types of fear that could maybe correlate with that.
Fair, valid. But I will also point out that I feel like just being capable of a certain level of empathy could just naturally give you that hypervigilance. If you're thinking about the situation, if you're standing at the foot of that pool thinking about what those four guys went through
How
in
could you
that
not?
pool, right?
How
I
could you
feel like
not?
if you're a person who carries a certain level of empathy with you through life, it wouldn't be hard just thinking about it to get into that state of hypervigilance and anxiety, just because you can't help but put yourself in the mindset of what those victims went through.
Yeah, I feel that a place can feel, icky. I think that our bodies respond to things in the environment that act as like a natural fight or flight response. I personally, when I go to locations to investigate, and I've talked about this before, I'll get goose pimples on my arm if I feel like there's something interrupting my frequency. And it's not a cold breeze. It's not, I will always try to debunk that. So I did a little bit of science for you, because I thought, maybe.
Oh, thank God you did it. I don't want to do it anymore.
I did. Well, and I'm glad I did this, because I did think to myself that I thought I knew the answer, but I just wanted to double check. And it's this idea of, I always say that when you go out, you investigate these type of locations, your body is your greatest tool. And according to, there's a website called helpmychronicpain.com, but basically it was an article that was titled, "What do electromagnetic fields and waves have to do with the human body?" And it basically discussed that our bodies do produce EMF. We have our own electromagnetic field. We are walking REM pods without the theremins. And
Oh,
our bodies.
I hate that. I hate that. I don't want to be a REM pod. I didn't wake up today and be like, yeah, I want to be a REM pod. I want to make the beeps.
Without the theremin. So there's no beeping involved, unless.
Well, it's no fun without the theremin of it all.
Every single time someone says theremin, I think Theraflu. Every time. But so our bodies naturally produce an electromagnetic field. And as we know from even working with REM pods, when those fields are interrupted, our bodies have a natural response to it, because something else with an electromagnetic field is interrupting that field. And I to me personally, like I thought that was very interesting.
I have a question. If we got an EMF reader and just put it up against ourselves, like, wouldn't that instantly cause a reading if that was the case?
Not necessarily. So our bodies are not producing the amount of electromagnetic free, or basically the amount of electricity that a K2 or an EMF reader would actually be able to read. When when you're reading with an EMF reader, there we go. Yes. So thank you. Marty just kind of let us know. So, and I'm going to read this whole thing because I think it's awesome. Human biomagnetism is based on the electrical currents running through the body. It is far too weak to produce any kind of detections by a conventional EMF reader. I love that. Thank you, Marty.
Okay.
So I have a quote in my email correspondence with the author Gavin Lee. He gave me this really cool quote, or, something that I thought was really cool. He said, with a place like Fox Hollow Farm, you have to separate genuine history, witness testimony, emotional impression, and legend. But even from a distance, Fox Hollow Farm has a terrible weight to it. The paranormal reports are fascinating, but for me, the most unsettling thing is the human tragedy beneath them. That is what stayed with me while writing this book. Not just the idea of a haunting, but the sense that some places can be marked by what happened there.
Damn. I love the way he worded that.
I know. He's
obvious
an
why
author.
He's an author. I was
Yeah.
just going to
Yes.
say, it's obvious.
His words really, for for someone who's never been there and to sit there and be like, it has a weight to it. Like, this place is been scarred and it's marked.
Yeah.
And
Well,
people feel that.
I mean, as you know, we've done our deep dives of locations too. And if you do enough research about a location, it does get to the point where it almost feels like you've been there. You've looked at
Yeah.
all the pictures and you've seen video and you've seen maps and stuff like that. I feel like it can really almost put that impression in your head that you felt like you've been there.
Yeah. And so I took that quote, and then I also found there was a paranormal investigation team called the Paraholics, and Evan Ogleville is the leader of that team. And he says, from the moment we arrived, we felt an overwhelming sense of something unseen surrounding us. I visited many haunted locations, but this experience was uniquely unsettling. The energy at Fox Hollow Farm was unlike anything I've encountered, gripping, intense, and unquestionably real. And
Wait, what was the name of that group?
Paraholics.
Paraholics?
Yeah.
Why is that the best name? I'm obsessed. I love it.
They're
love that name.
drunk with ghost, and I love that as well. Yeah,
I want to do that.
I know. I mean, it brings a new term to drinking with spirits, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
But so just even like taking stuff from people who have been there, and this is just recently. I believe their investigation was back in 2024. It's just, you get to the property and you automatically feel all of this, and it's just very present. And once again, I think it's kind of our bodies going, should you really be here? Let's take this up.
Yeah, and I think we both can explain why that feeling would occur. It's just, is that feeling paranormal or is it scientific?
I think it's paranormal. I think it is literally something interrupting our own.
Of course you do. You're the believer.
Yeah, I do. I have been in locations myself to where it has a history, a backstory, and you just feel it. You feel what that location is trying to speak to you through your body. And it's, once again, so hard to explain unless you're there. But I do. I think it's paranormal. I think it's ghosts trying to reach out and touch someone.
The man in the red shirt is one of the most frequently reported apparitions at Fox Hollow Farm. Does the consistency of these sightings make the reports more compelling, or has the legend itself shaped what people expect to see?
I think, personally, consistency is key in this case. So what I've been able to find is that you have two cases where the man in the red shirt was sighted, but the one didn't tell the other. So to me, that rules out what someone expects to see. You also have so many other consistent reports in the haunting, not just the man in the red shirt. You have the pool room / pump room incidents. You have the mother-in-law suite, where today the son, because Robert and Vicky have two sons, their eldest son lives in the mother-in-law suite that Joe lives in. He is still to this day having the same paranormal experiences that Joe did. So they're consistent. And I read this book by Richard Estep. It was written by Richard Estep and Robert Graves, and it's The Horrors of Fox Hollow Farm. And in it were just the two cases of Vicky and Joe who saw the man in the red shirt. And Vicky stated she had seen the figure of a young man in a bright red shirt and denim jeans walking through the woods without an apparent care in the world. It looked as if he was taking an afternoon stroll. The man's back was to Vicky, so she couldn't make out his face. Just as she was about to call out and ask the man what on earth he thought he was doing, it suddenly dawned on her that most of his legs were missing. From the thighs down, there was nothing but empty air. And then Joe's story is that when Joe saw the figure of the man walking away from him into the tree line, once again, the man was wearing a bright red shirt and blue jeans. As with Vicky's sighting, Joe saw that the figure's legs were transparent. The apparition had seemed completely solid to Joe at first, even blocking out a couple of trees as he walked in front of them. It was only when the man disappeared in a thin air without going any further into the trees that Joe realized he was looking at a ghost. There's so much consistency within the haunting of Fox Hollow Farm. And once again, I will state when it comes to the man in the red shirt, I do feel that that is kind of, I hesitate to use the word famous, but the most well known just because of the things that Vicky and Joe, they were some of the first people to ever see this particular spirit. I have not found any reports of anyone else actually seeing the man in the red shirt, just those two. So like I said, I think consistency is rather key in this case as the haunting as a whole.
So you say consistency, which is true. The story has been consistent. But from what I've seen, the only people reporting it is Rob and Vicky and Joe. Those are the only three I've seen actually talking about that sighting. So, Vicky was the first one to bring it up. And then Joe, who lived with them, said, "Oh, I saw it too." But to me,
I'm
that's
so sorry. The way you said, "Oh, I saw it too." Like the way you said that was really funny to me. I'm so sorry.
no, because that's what it feels like. Whenever I saw Vicky talking about it or Joe talking about it, that's what it felt like. He was just there to be like, "Oh, I saw it too," just so that there was a second claim there. But other than that, I haven't seen any other people reporting that specific sightings. And I have no problem with it. Guy in a red shirt has see-through legs, whatever. I don't like how they're connecting it with an actual victim that was identified, named Alan Livingston. Now, the reason people are connecting this is because somewhere it is said that the last time he was seen, he was wearing a red shirt. I don't know if that's true or if that's just paranormal hearsay. I don't know if that's just somebody trying to retrofit the guy in the red shirt story to connect it to an actual victim that's been identified. But regardless, everybody knows about this story. If you go to Fox Hollow, it's the prominent apparition that you'll hear the graves talk about is the man in the red
do you
shirt.
think that's because, that was Vicky's first moment, that was, to me, that's what I correlate that to is that because Vicky was a complete non-believer and that was like the first moment for her that was like, wait a minute, this guy has no legs. This is not human. To me, I'm just wondering if that stands out, for Vicky to talk about it the most because that was like her first one.
Yeah. But all I hear them talk about is those two moments. All I hear her talk about is when she saw him for the first time. I don't hear her talk about seeing him again after that. I've never heard her talk about seeing him again.
I never found other reports.
The only other story that I found is Joe's, and he goes with the same story as well. He followed this guy and it led him to, I think, a femur, he said, to actually finding, right?
Yeah, his story, because Vicky's story was that she had gotten home. Rob was like doing some outside painting stuff, and she had turned around and saw this man a distance away walking into the woods. And Joe's story was that he was out with his dog walking late at night, and this guy crossed right in front of him, like literally within feet of him. And he followed him. And then his dog took off running, and then he ran after his dog and he came into like close proximity of this man. That's Joe's story.
Yeah, but it led him to finding some human remains, didn't it?
Yeah, so later on, Vicky, once their stories, they had talked to each other about what they had seen. And so they both decided, hey, like, I went into the woods after this guy, and Vicky was like, hey, like I saw him walking in the woods. So they both proceeded to walk where they felt that the man disappeared in the woods. And that is where Joe had found a leg bone. Yes, a femur.
It really seems that Vicky and Joe laid the psychological priming with that story. I almost feel like it would have been better if it came from other people rather than Vicky and Joe, because once visitors or the investigators come onto the property and go into those woods, like they're not going to enter it with an open mind because they know that story. I think true objectivity in that fashion is impossible, but I feel like they enter expecting to see a man in red. That expectation can kind of act as like a subconscious script. So if they see a flash of that color of red, which it could be so many things.
Yeah.
The first thing that comes into my mind is like a cardinal. Like if a cardinal were to fly by quickly and you just get that flash of red out of your peripheral with that story in your mind, I feel like even though it was a natural occurrence, you're going to be like, oh, it's the man in the red shirt. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's suspicious that the only people with that story is the person who lived there and then the person who moved in temporarily. I think that's a little sus, if that's okay to say.
I will say, just in the research that I've been doing, a couple of things on that is that Richard Estep went there twice. He had spent numerous days there. There was that other team that they claimed they spent 6 months there, but I will discuss that later. No one has ever reported seeing the man in the red except those two. So in my mind, I kind of debunked the theory of, they're expecting to see something because no one has. No one has seen anything. It's almost as if this spirit is no longer there. Once that femur was found, maybe that's just kind of like his moment to sit there and say, hey, look, this is still a piece of me. Please find it. And then I will also say that idea of, like you had said, of the priming, and in your mind, like if you see a cardinal, I don't know if that would necessarily work because you have two people who have seen a whole man. And it wasn't like he was just kind of flew by, like you would see a flash of red. Like they physically watched him walk into the woods and disappear. So it wasn't like a fleeting glance.
If you go into those woods though, with that story in your head, I feel like you're psychologically primed to pick out the
Yes.
color red above others.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it might not be similar to what the original claims were, a cardinal flying by, but if you're looking for that red and you see that red, even if it's brief, I feel like your mind could jump to conclusions if that's what you were hoping to see.
Visitors often report whispers, footsteps approaching from behind, and heavy doors opening or closing on their own. Which of those would you personally find the hardest to explain and why?
I think I'm going to flip it. I'm going to start with the easiest to explain, what I think is the easiest to explain, and
Okay.
that is whispers. You guys have heard me talk about auditory pareidolia, and when it comes to whispers, I feel like that's something that really comes into play. The human brain can kind of be a pattern-seeking machine. If you're getting some kind of infrasound or white noise, it's very easy to hear sounds your brain recognizes within that noise. And then you got the infrasound of it all, which, like we discussed in Waverly, the low frequency sounds can cause a person to feel all kinds of bad, and it can cause them to feel hypervigilant, which I unfortunately found out when I experimented that on myself. One thing I didn't really talk about with hypervigilance when I talked about it earlier is that it causes your brain to enter like a survival state. And because of that, I feel like it kind of amplifies your senses. And I can attest to this. I've dealt with anxiety for a long time. I've been in those states of hypervigilance for very long periods of time. So I can attest to that feeling. Like you can hear the tiniest of sounds and they freak you out. So to me, that's really easy to explain. Next, the easier to explain, but not the easiest would probably be the footsteps. There's acoustic mirroring where like a floorboard could be creaking, 20 feet away. The sound can bounce off a flat surface and it can hit your ears in a way that just kind of plays tricks with your brain. So it can make it seem like a footstep that happened after your footstep, like an echo, essentially. So there's that. What I think is the hardest to explain, and obviously this leaves only one option left, is
Only one.
heavy doors opening or closing. I think that would be the hardest to explain. Not impossible, but more difficult. With that said, it is kind of crazy for a heavy door to open or close on its own, but it isn't necessarily uncommon, especially when you look at the house itself. The layout of this house to me doesn't seem like a standard home. I mean, it has like a basement pool and then, another floor and then the upstairs apartments. And when I was looking into the house, I started coming across this thing called the stack effect. And to help explain the stack effect, I have this article from warmermornings.com where they explain the stack effect, and they made this post in 2020. And they say, if you've ever seen an eagle or other large bird gliding above a canyon's warm air flows, then you can understand the stack effect. The eagle is taking advantage of the warm air that flows up between the canyon walls and buoys the bird aloft. A similar effect happens within your home when warm air flows up through the building's enclosure. The stack effect is based on buoyancy and encompasses the air either moving into or out of your home. Stack effect is the natural buoyancy of warm air made stronger by larger temperature differences and taller buildings. In warmer temperate climates, stack effect is a lesser issue. In colder climates, like Michigan, the stack effect becomes more pronounced. Along with wind pressure, stack effect is one of the main drivers of air movement within a building. And if you look at Fox Hollow, it's like a huge multi-level country estate built in 1977, I believe. And it has a really unusual, like almost cavernous layout. And I feel like because of that unique design, it can cause powerful air currents. It can cause the stack effect inside the structure. From what I gather, it can kind of create a vacuum. So it can create a vacuum of air. And it's a little complex, the whole stack effect thing. But basically, like I said, it is, thank you to our behind the scenes producer, Marty. He says it can create a vacuum pulling cold air in from low level gaps and releasing warm air in upper level leaks. So I needed to see if this was like something that would happen regularly in homes. And I came across another article from homewindows.co.uk, and they made a post that said how to stop doors slamming, fixes for banging doors. And it was posted like a year ago. And it says, why do doors slam? Understanding the reasons behind doors slamming shut is key before seeking remedies. The abrupt shutting of a door and the resultant dreaded loud noise can often be attributed to differences in air pressure, hinges that have worn out, or door frames that are not aligned properly. A misalignment in the frame may lead to a door closing with unexpected force. Air pressure plays another pivotal role. Gaps within the frame can result in variations of pressure across different rooms, leading to doors forcefully slamming closed without warning. And, most of the things I've seen, they're talking about regular doors, and I know it says heavy doors, but like how heavy are the doors at Fox Hollow? I can't, if they're just regular doors being slammed, there is a very sensible explanation for that. I feel like unique layouts are more prone to these kind of things, just like we were talking about in Waverly with that really unique layout. Well, Fox Hollow Farm also has unique layouts. It's way more prone to these kind of happenings.
Come through, Robert Stack Effect.
Robert Stack Effect. Okay.
So really quickly, you were talking about with anxiety and hypervigilancy. And I have to say, I feel that, us, Jess, knowing each other for so long, we had a moment in hypervigilancy that honestly, I don't think we would be here today if it had not happened.
Are you going to talk about the train?
I am, yes.
Okay.
Look, there was a moment when Jess and I were in college and I was taking her to a friend's place, and I've always had this weird feeling around train tracks. I just always stop at them, even if their arms down, no nothing, because I just feel weird about it. And I know Jess felt weird. It was a really weird moment.
Did I feel weird?
I think I wasn't sure if you thought I was weird or you felt weird. Regardless.
I don't recall.
But I stopped and I just kind of laughed and explained why I do that. And then right when I was about to go forward, the arms never came down. A train went rushing right by. And if I had, honestly, if I had not, maybe if I would have just gone over the tracks and not stopped at all, we would have missed it. But it was just such a freaky moment to me because my fight or flight my anxiety was like, you need to stop, whatever it was. And, so I can attest to that with hypervigilancy and the things that we kind of feel in the ether, so to speak.
Yeah. And while that situation was crazy, I do remember that instance very vividly of you almost pulling forward and then you stopped for no reason, really. There was nothing telling you to stop.
It was
it was
just my anxiety.
Yeah. So, and I think we did joke about that being a paranormal occurrence.
We did,
But, I think it's natural to feel a certain level of hypervigilance when you're reaching a train track. So, you can say it was paranormal, but it also could have just been a natural instinct
Absolutely.
that just happened to save our lives.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, yeah. So In order to answer this question, I think whispers and footsteps are kind of the hardest to explain in general. When you have a setting like this, it can be difficult if you're doing something in the woods, like we discussed over at Lake Shawnee. The pool room is a big concrete space that echoes really easily. So if I were hearing whispers or footsteps in either of these places, I feel that it would be a lot harder to really narrow down what is causing those sounds. But I also, I throughout my reading of the horrors of Fox Hollow Farm with Richard Stepp and Robert Graves, there were tons of instances that I could have brought up to where someone was hearing whispers or like there were reports of people hearing whole ass conversations. And it wasn't just kind of a little whisper here or there. It was the two men talking. It was the most common occurrence, especially from the locker room area. Someone would be in the locker room area and they would hear two men having a conversation. But I said, you know what? That obviously could be explained. So I found something that I could not explain. And it actually came from a woman named Lisa Crick. She is the event coordinator and tour guide for the Haunted America Tours. It's an organization that arranges for members of the public to visit haunted locations and spend the evening there in the hopes of experiencing something paranormal. So her and another investigator were doing their own private investigation at Fox Hollow Farm. They had decided to go into Vicky's room. Vicky has an ensuite bathroom there as well because she does not like the bathroom that Robert has because that was Herb's bathroom. And she claims she gets a very icky, like an icky little, I don't like this bathroom. So she doesn't use that one. So she has her own ensuite bathroom. Lisa Crick states that after searching the room to make sure that they were really alone, the two women took a seat on the floor and began to conduct an EVP session, not really expecting to get much of anything. After all, Vicky's bathroom had no reputation for being paranormally active. Did you see that? Lisa asked, suddenly pointing toward the open doorway. Her companion shook her head, indicating that she hadn't seen anything. That's odd. I just watched a white cat walk right out of there. Lisa peeked out into the bedroom. There was no cat to be seen. Although Vicky Graves does own several cats, Lisa didn't remember seeing any of them that fit this description, and both paranormal investigators were absolutely certain that there hadn't been a cat present in the room when they first searched it. Later that evening, and this is the part that really gets me, right? Lisa was standing outside on the back patio when she felt something slide past her legs. Looking down, she saw that it was the tail of the same white cat, which sauntered past her in the direction of the woods before disappearing into thin air before her very eyes. Vicky, do you have a white cat? She asked the lady of the house. No, Vicky said, but I can tell you that you're not the first visitor to see one here at Fox Hollow Farm, myself included.
So ghost pussy?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cat? Sorry, I forgot to add.
If I was a gay ghost, I would totally come back as a white pussy cat.
Oh God.
It's okay.
So wait. If I were a gay ghost, are you saying that when you die, you're all of a sudden going to become a straight ghost? Like what?
Who knows? It's.
that-
I mean, it. Is it not a choice? No, it's who we are on the inside, right? But what really made this stand out to me, it was that ending where this cat sauntered between her legs. She physically looked at it and watched it disappear, like literally disappear for her very eyes.
You know, it'd be funny to find out. What if Vicky actually did have a cat? She was just fucking with them.
Maybe.
It's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, it was just a little fun game for her and Rob. Like,
well, yeah, but also it's like, how could Vicky explain that this cat disappeared into thin air right in front of Lisa's face?
Hey, cats can be sneaky bitches. All right. They can get into things they shouldn't,
In the woods.
They're slippery little buggers.
They are. But that was my thing where when I looked at this question, I was like, I would not be able to really explain that experience. And that is something that would stand out to me wholeheartedly, especially at a place like Fox Hollow Farm, where they really get into things of the Native American spirits that are there, the elemental spirit that is there. And I will preface this. I'm a believer of the paranormal. I don't know if I necessarily believe. I'm not here to shove anything down anyone's throats as far as their beliefs are concerned, but like,
You shove it down mine all the time.
well, stop flirting with me, Jess. I'm gay.
I can't help.
But I'm not sure if I necessarily believe in the idea of like an elemental spirit, or there are talks of what they call the frog, which is this demonic presence that takes place in the woods. I'm not sure if I believe in all of that per se, but I do think that these are something that you have to take into account, especially when it comes to a location of Fox Hollow Farm. They do say that the Native American spirits that are there are really there because they're mad about what happened on the land. And they're just pissed because it is not okay to do what Herb did. So these are, I don't know, these are things, but Bree has a question.
Oh, it's actually not even a question. It's more of, I have a point of what Jessica was saying before, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Oh, go for it.
You mentioned the air conditioning. He looked it up. A lot of farms in Indiana back then have a thing called evaporative cooling. It is what I also have in my house. During the summertime, during the heat time, when you have that air conditioning going, because you have to actually have somebody switch it to heat when you need it to be heated. But when it's the air conditioning, you actually have to have windows and doors open because of the airflow. And if you don't have enough, the airflow will actually just slam doors automatically. It happens in my house all the time.
See, I thought you were going to argue against me, but you're actually helping my point.
I am.
And I love you for that. Thank you.
Because it happens in my house all the time. If I don't have enough windows or doors open for the airflow to go through with my cooling, it will slam my doors.
Or maybe you have a ghost.
Or I have a ghost.
Is your house haunted?
Well, the previous owner did die in this house, so it's possible.
Oh, awesome.
The indoor pool area is often described as the most unsettling part of the house, with reports of dread, shadow figures, and even phantom choking sensations. Do you think those experiences point to residual trauma or something else?
I personally feel that a lot of it is residual trauma. I do feel the spirits of these men are trapped in a permanent sense of death. And just for anyone out there who is listening to this, to kind of give you an idea of what really gives you the sense of like residual trauma. And there is a really cool website called agentramin.co.uk, to where they kind of give a breakdown of like what is a residual haunting. And a residual haunting is also called a psychic impression. It happens when energy or ghost repeatedly repeats the same action. There's no awareness, there's no interaction with the surroundings. It's like being stuck in the past. Interestingly, this type of haunting is pretty common. Sometimes people hear faint music from an old party. Other times it might be the sound of a historic battle. The events replay like a loop that never stops. And they listed some really cool examples, which is like the Winchester Mystery House, Gettysburg, Stanley Hotel, Edinburgh, Coliseum, it's really cool places. I was like, let me try to go a little bit deeper, because I do, reading about Fox Hollow and hearing about all the stuff that kind of happens in the pool room itself, especially with these shadow figures that are reported in the book of the horrors of Fox Hollow Farm. They did have a psychic come out. His name is Brian Sanders. And this is someone that Robert Graves met with personally, kind of out of the blue. And he really proved himself to Robert with a lot of the stuff that he was saying. And the reason why I bring this up is because it brings up, in my opinion, one of Jess's favorite topics. And I love to see the eye roll. So he basically talks about in the pool room itself, part of the reason why it's so active is because of a portal that is in the pool. That sound you heard was her eyes rolling onto the floor.
I hate portals.
I know. And we get further. I can't wait to talk about more. But the one in the pool, Brian states that they're definitely here. The biggest and most powerful is in the pool. That's the one room I don't like to go into, because the first time I went down there, I could see it for what it was. A purple and greenish energy pool right there under the water with human hands rising up out of it. I could hear their voices talking. That is probably one of the creepiest things that I have ever heard, just to kind of, see all these hands rising up out of the water, not really knowing what is going on there. It's almost like a purgatory. So to me, that's kind of where I get, yes.
I have a question.
Absolutely.
Were psychedelics involved at all?
Not that I'm aware of.
That sounds like some heavy, trippy shit.
Look, maybe I could reach out to Richard a step and through email and see if I could get an answer. To me, I just kind of felt like that really speaks of residual trauma of what it, had happened in that area, if what they say is true. And that is where a lot of these men met their final moments of life. They're stuck. They are repeating this horrible, horrible thing that had happened to them. And it's just there, and it's just on loop.
Yeah. Well, you know what I always say about residual trauma.
That it exists. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Next question.
Part of me wants to let you get away with that, but
Not
no.
today, Satan.
Residual
Not
trauma,
today.
more like schmazisual trauma. I don't know what I was trying there.
That was good. I like that.
Yeah, it makes sense. I've already talked about the pool quite a bit. We've talked about the dread. I feel like I've already addressed my feelings about that and why, especially in the pool area, why somebody would feel that way. When it comes to shadow figures, dude, you're in a room with a pool. Any freaking light it's gonna bounce. The lights are gonna do weird things in that room, whether you want them to or not. There's a body of water there, which is an extremely reflective surface. I feel like you could see all kinds of things, especially even at night. Like if you don't have a lot of lights on, or if you're not getting that natural light from those doors that are right there.
How would that reflect a shadow?
Light behaves erratically in that type of environment. Okay. If somebody is like, you have an investigator walking around and they have a flashlight, right? And that water, it's gonna do some weird stuff with that light. It's gonna bend it in a weird way. And like our behind the scenes producer says, light refraction could cause you to see something out of your periphery. And that's true as well. Like it's going to do weird things with light, that type of room. So I feel like any shadow figures you see in there or you kind of see out of the corner of your eye, you can't really be like, oh, that's evidence. So when it comes to the phantom choking sensations, I actually got some science. One, I feel like the phantom choking sensation, it could be caused, since we were talking about this, by anxiety. Panic attacks. With my experience with them, your body is releasing stress hormones. You'll get tense and your muscles will start to contract. And that can include like your throat and your chest area, which can make you feel like you're being choked. And especially if somebody who put in that type of unique environment and it is causing them a lot of anxiety, and if they've never had a panic attack before and they experience that, especially knowing the history, knowing it's said that Herb mainly choked his victims. And so I think it's easy to connect the two. But there's also another reason why people could be choking.
Give it to me.
It's science. You ready for science?
I'm ready.
Okay, I'm going to read this thing. I don't know if you've ever heard of chlorine cough.
That's a great drag queen name as well.
Yo, I didn't think about that. Welcome to the stage, chlorine cough.
Chlorine cough. Oh, I love it. Oh, okay.
But to explain this, I have an article from clevelandclinic.org. And this article is, can indoor pools cause chlorine cough? Germ-killing chemicals in the water can lead to respiratory issues. And it was published 2023. And it says chlorine is the most common disinfectant used in indoor and outdoor swimming pools. Trace amounts, we're talking 1 to 3 parts per million, are added to pool water to kill any dangerous bacteria. Problems start when chlorine binds to sweat, urine, and other body waste floating around in pool water. Chlorine and this icky stuff combine to make chloramines, which can irritate your nose, throat, and lungs. Chloramine polluted air is heavier too, leading it to settle at a height where you're more apt to breathe it in. In outdoor pools, these chlorine-related vapors dissipate quickly in the surrounding air and aren't much of an issue. But add chlorine to an indoor pool and fumes may linger in the contained space. So with that said, like obviously to have this choking sensation, you would have to be in the water. The most popular report of this comes from Joe LeBlanc, who was in the water when he experienced it. So it would make sense. And the pool, indoor pool, like all that criteria I just listed for a chlorine cough, for the chloramines to happen, are in that environment. Also, there's one thing I want to talk about, and that's
Yes.
the vacuum story.
The vacuum story. Yes.
Yes.
That Vicky. Give us what happened there.
So Vicky has said that she was vacuuming in the pool room, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Gravel that the boys tracked in. Yeah.
Yeah. And the vacuum kept unplugging continuously. It kept unplugging over and over and over, even though like the extension cord was fine. And then I guess at some point it like sparked or it got yanked out of the socket or something like that.
Yes. Yes.
And you hear Vicky talk about this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And from everything I've read, from everything I've watched, this was a one-time thing that happened. Vicky dealt with it. It was always Vicky who went through this, and it only happened that one time. But I came across an article on yourcurrent.com, and it's titled Paranormal Activity, but it was written by Robert Harrington in 2012. And in this article, he interviews Robert Graves, and he's quoted saying, "Another strange occurrence takes place in the basement. Graves said his vacuum is unplugged continuously." And this is Rob. He's talking about Rob Graves. Said his vacuum is unplugged continuously despite being connected with an extension cord of adequate length. We have to say, and this is the quote, "We have to say, stop unplugging the sweeper. I need to sweep," he said, adding that once spoken, the unplugging ends. It happens routinely. I have not heard them say that anywhere but this article. I've never heard of that being a thing. And this was all the way back in 2012.
Yeah, in the Horrors of Fox Hollow Farm, he does mention that. He said the first time it happened with Vicky, but there was a couple times to where he has been vacuuming because the pool room gets a lot of gravel. They come in from outside and they will vacuum it consistently. And he says it does happen all the time. So in the book, he did state that as well. And look, let's be honest, when you're looking at a show that it was worked up on, as what I believe was Paranormal Witness that we watched, it's just like an investigation where you have hours of footage or hours of what you call evidence, and they're only trying to fit so much into an hour. So to me, it's also, maybe it's the idea that Rob did tell, these producers, hey, like this happens consistently, but they said, you know what, once is enough. Never mind.
Or maybe they decided to stop saying that because it made it less believable that it was just this thing that happened all the time. Because I feel like if you say it happens all the time, then that sounds like an electrical problem and not so much
yeah,
a ghost problem, you know?
Yeah, but what kind of electrical problems are we talking to where the plug is being pulled out consistently? Does that happen all the time?
I don't know.
Electricity and electrical problems?
I just think they underestimated the length of that extension cord, if I'm being honest. I mean, I've done it before when vacuuming.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Where
Yeah,
I thought
yeah.
I had more length and then I accidentally, it's like, it almost feels like, and I'm not saying she did, like, this is just everything I say is speculation.
Absolutely.
But it almost seems like it was just something kind of annoying that she kept dealing with. And she's like, what if I say it, but ghost did it? Huh? Yeah, I could just say a ghost did it. It wasn't me doing it. It was a ghost.
See, that's how she actually had to stop vacuuming and Rob had to do it because she was like, no, a ghost is doing it. I'm not vacuuming anymore. And now Rob is the vacuumer.
That's probably how she got out of cleaning that other bathroom too. She's like, I don't like that bathroom. I can't go in there. Nope, can't clean it.
Vicky Graves no longer does the dishes. She no longer does the laundry. She doesn't
laundry
cook dinner.
Room, got a bad feeling. Can't go into the laundry room.
Absolutely not.
One former tenant, Joe LeBlanc, claimed an invisible force pulled him underwater. Is a reported physical encounter like that more convincing than simply seeing an apparition, or does it demand even stronger evidence?
I want to start this answer off by using a very famous Carl Sagan quote. And this is how I feel about all the claims I've heard.
Getting fancy.
It's extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And Mr. LeBlanc has made some extraordinary claims. But I feel like, especially when we're talking about the pool encounter, which we've already spoken about quite a bit in the last question, there's too many natural variables that could have caused something like that. And I just listed them in the last question. He said it felt like the opening scene of Jaws.
Dun-dun.
In that type of room, that indoor pool with those heavy chloramine gases going on and maybe not understanding why you're choking, that could lead you to having some kind of panic attack, which could cause some like violent muscle cramps. And that could cause that like instant sinking feeling. So I don't know. When it comes to Joe, I've seen and read a lot of this guy telling all kinds of stories, but he never has anything to back it up ever. He says like these crazy things were happening. Well, why didn't he try to record it? Why didn't he try to get some kind of evidence so when he's telling people about this? Because in all the interviews I've seen of him, he seems like he just kind of dealt with it.
Yeah.
Well, this happened, and then this happened, and then this other crazy thing happened, and I felt like I was about to die in the pool. But he never talks about what he did in between of that to maybe prove to people that he was experiencing this. Do you know what I mean? It's just crazy story after crazy story with no effort being made to prove that these things were happening to him.
Mm-hmm. He did get a great piece of evidence.
He did?
Yeah. He has the EVP of in the apartment that he, after crazy stuff was happening, he took out his phone. He decided to go ahead and hit record and ask questions of thin air. And he got the EVP of saying the married one.
Oh, I remember that EVP. It's awful.
Yeah.
I hated it. I did
Yeah.
not hear that whatsoever.
Yeah. But to your claim, I completely understand what you're saying in that aspect. But also, it's kind of like with what happened to Joe in certain aspects of like seeing an apparition, it's not like you can sit there and say, hey, hold on, don't go anywhere. Let me pull out my camera so I can take a picture of you and people believe it. It was fleeting, you know?
He points out when he gives tours and stuff like that, and he's done the interviews and whatnot, he'll always show these points where he said, like, oh, these things kept happening there. Like the closet. If you thought a portal was in the closet, wouldn't you think to like maybe set up some equipment in there? Because he said like a lot of reoccurring stuff would happen in that closet because he thought a portal was there. Freaking portals. I hate them. But, you know, if he really believed that, if he was getting the most activity in that closet, why didn't he try to, other than the EVP on his phone, why didn't he try to get any evidence of it whatsoever? I mean, I feel like that would have been a natural human instinct for anybody kind of dealing with this weird occurrence after weird occurrence. And when you hear Joe's whole story of all the things he experienced, it's a lot. He went through a lot.
A lot.
And I
So
feel like
much.
a very natural human instinct, if you were in that situation, would be, I have to prove this to people. Like, you know, this is happening to me and nobody believes it. I got to prove it to them. I got to get something. Why didn't he try other than this horrible EVP? Why isn't there like anything else?
Look, just in context of that, I don't know at that time Joe's financial situation. I know he worked at the used car dealership, or I don't know if it was used cars or just the car dealership. I don't know how much he paid in rent, but to me, it's kind of like, you know, all of this was happening to Joe in, this was like the mid 2000s, if I'm correct on that, or it could have been the 2010s. I was just, when Joe LeBlanc, lived.
Well, I have an article about somebody talking about that pool experience.
Okay.
And that was published in 2014. So I don't know if that's around, but you said the 2010s and the articles
around that time.
Yeah.
For me personally, like I know that just financial situations, I don't know what it is for Joe. It honestly didn't even get like a camcorder to really start doing these type of investigations on my own until just a couple of years ago. I want to bring it back to what you had said about the portal in the closet. And that is only because I find it so funny, just from my perspective of just this portal in the closet. All I can picture is just a whole bunch of gay ghosts coming out, and they're playing like "I Will Survive" by Gloria Gaynor. And just literally like a conga line of just gay ghosts coming out of this portal in the closet.
That sounds fun.
It does.
I can fuck with that portal.
I also have this vision of like a bouncer going, finish the line, clang, 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 and seeing if the ghost can pass through or not. But anyway, I personally think, I'm going all over the place and I apologize. Because to me, like Joe LeBlanc, everything that he went through is harrowing, go ahead.
I was going to ask you a question because I was thinking about that. It really seems like Joe says he was targeted by Herb.
Yeah.
Right? That is something he keeps saying. What I want to know is why. Like, why do you think Herb his spirit is like targeted Joe so severely like that?
I think personally that there was an attraction from Herb to Joe LeBlanc. I don't know Joe LeBlanc's sexuality. It's never been discussed. It's not me to decide that. But I think the spirit of Herb, he was attracted to Joe LeBlanc. It was maybe the type that he went after. And I personally feel that is why he really targeted is the correct word. Once again, the things that Joe LeBlanc went through, and not only in the pool room, but in that apartment as well. And I will say what's interesting to me is that with things that had happened with Joe at the apartment, there were like he would hear knocking coming from the brass knocker that is on the outside door. There
Yeah.
was the story of how at one point, like he opened the door to expecting to find someone there, and the door knocker was at this like kind of 90-degree angle, like completely defying gravity, a la Wicked, and then it just like slammed down. And today, as I stated earlier, the son who lives in that apartment now, he does report knocking coming from the door knocker still to this day. It is a common occurrence that he has come to ignore.
Well, maybe he can get the evidence that Joe severely lacked in getting.
Yeah. He also, the son is still claiming to hear like footsteps, but now the son has sat there and stated, in at least in the book that I had read, that he had stated that he's just so used to it now that it doesn't bother him anymore. But he doesn't feel targeted. Joe, from Joe's perspective, there was the dreams that he was having to where he
Yeah,
had that
I remember.
fight or flight, to
Mhm.
run constantly. There were all the things that would happen when he was like walking his dog at night. Yeah, to me, I feel that Herb took a special interest. Now, when we talk about the pool, to me, I kind of feel like this is something that can't really be disproved because look, when someone is touching you. Right? You feel those fingers. You know what it feels like. And you know the feeling of hands around your neck or grabbing your feet. And personally, I feel the things that Joe went through were just like nothing short of like compelling evidence to me. I don't see a reason why he's going to make this up. He wasn't really there for attention. He was literally just a guy who was like, I need to live closer to my job so I don't get fired.
Ghost hunters often collect EVPs and other evidence at Fox Hollow Farm. What kind of evidence would it actually take to convince you that something paranormal is happening there?
I love all the evidence collected at Fox Hollow Farm. And with the amount of strange things that happen, like to me, there's just no way that it cannot be haunted. And I just chose a couple of little things that I thought, because look, we all go out there with REM pods and cat balls and all that kind of stuff that, easily could kind of be disproved. So for me personally, there were two experiences. One was kind of from the Gavin Lee book of Fox Hollow Farm, where he states, thermal imaging cameras picked up an unexplained cold spots, particularly around the pool's deep end and near the sliding doors that led to the wooded area behind the house, the same direction where the remains had been found. I love thermal imaging. It is such a great tool when you're paranormal investigating.
I love when farts are captured on thermal imaging.
Ask anyone
my
who's ever
favorite.
investigated with me. I will sit there. They look, and Marty can attest to this because we've been out there. He will not be in front of the thermal imaging camera. He flat out refused because I told people, I was honest. I want to capture a fart.
I will run. He said, I will run.
I was even willing to capture my own farts. I think it's so funny, and why not have fun when you're out there? Okay. So the other thing that I found that was kind of compelling, and once again, look, Jess is going to be rolling her eyes at me because I love an SLS camera and I want one so bad.
I knew it. I was
You knew
actually
it.
going to ask.
Yeah.
I was like, what about the crazy stick figures? Don't you like those guys?
I do. Yeah, and Richard Estep did talk about basically Joe LeBlanc was kind of hanging out with them because he does go out to like the investigations at Fox Hollow Farm and all that kind of stuff. And they were in the apartment. He had kind of gone to the closet area. He had walked out of the closet area and they're filming him with the SLS. They are seeing his stick figure. And then they say suddenly a second figure emerged on the screen. This one was much smaller, perhaps the height of a toddler. It was also human shaped and it dashed forward until it was standing directly to Joe's right. Joe, don't move, I said. There's another figure, much smaller and further away. I think it just came out of the bedroom. And Joe said, come on out. It's okay. Peering into the darkness. There was nothing visible to the naked eye. When I took a couple of flash photographs, nothing out of the ordinary showed up on either of them. Yet there was a figure standing at Joe's side, appearing to look up at him. He could feel something lightly touching the palm of his hand. And we've gone at depth with SLS cameras and what they do. Oh yes,
I feel like you're going to keep bringing it up in episodes until you get one.
100%.
And then you're probably going to bring it up more.
Yeah, more than likely. I will use it for absolutely everything. I'm obsessed with the idea of an SLS camera. And once again, like those out there, we have talked about it at length with a couple of episodes. We describe what it does. But go out there, research it. I feel that the SLS is pretty hard to disprove because it is picking something up out of thin air. It is refracting. And I don't know, like you're seeing the little stick figures and it's not
It's fun.
it's fun, but you also know that it's not a cabinet. It's not something else. Like it is something that you cannot see with a naked eye. And some people will be like, oh, well, it's dust. Well, it would lose form, right? At some point if it was dust. So, those out there who don't believe in the SLS camera, what is it? Tell me. Tell me what it is. Not you, Jess, in particular, but anyway.
Oh, okay. People who are going to agree with you. Tell them. Tell them.
Yeah, tell me what it is. And I guess the only other thing, and I wasn't even sure if I was going to bring this up, but Jess, I had this EVP played for you that was this famous, I hesitate to say famous, excuse me, but Richard and Sepp had put it out there on his social medias when it was taken. He put it out there on YouTube and it's about 6 seconds long. They were out in the woods to where the burn pile was that Herb had done the burning of these men's remains. And they had captured this EVP to where it was a very gravelly voice that was clearly not any of them. Basically, he thinks that it states, get away from there. What did you think of that EVP, Jess, as far as evidence?
I didn't know what the hell I was listening to. It doesn't sound creepy to me. It does sound like people talking, but it doesn't sound like anything supernatural.
Look, I agree with you.
I don't hear anything that weird. It's just a 6-second clip. You're getting zero context. You said he stated these things, but we're only getting 6 seconds. What are we supposed to make of that?
Correct.
It doesn't sound like anything paranormal.
In the description, Richard states, while investigating the woods at Fox Hollow Farm, close to the spot where serial killer Herb Baumeister disposed of his victims' bodies, our digital voice recorder picked up what sounds like a strangulated older male's voice saying, get away from there. Immediately afterward, Anna says, that is weird, but she's not reacting to the voice. None of us heard it at the time. I listened to this clip over and over and over. I had actually reached out to Richard to see if where it was because I wasn't sure. I got to be honest. I hear something that sounds, but that's it. I don't hear any diction of any sort, how anyone could even understand the get away from me portion.
You hear a little voice there, but it kind of sounds like the second female voice. It sounds like they're just responding to whatever was said by that other voice.
Yeah. Yeah.
They sound the same, except one sounds a little louder, which just tells me that they were probably closer to the microphone than the other person was.
And that's my thing is that, I also want to show people that, look, when you're out there doing these type of investigations, when it comes to evidence, especially with EVPs, all that kind of stuff, it is all taken with a grain of salt in a sense. And to me, that was just kind of an example that I wanted to show that I don't think it was that great of an EVP personally. And I wanted to get your thoughts.
What kind of evidence would it actually take to convince you that something paranormal is happening there?
Yeah.
It's definitely not that EVP
Definitely
that
not
I just
the
listened
EVP.
to.
Yeah. No.
It's definitely not most EVPs that I've heard that are either incredibly muffled or sound incredibly fabricated. I just wish paranormal investigators would stop relying on these things. To be convinced of any of this evidence, I feel like the space they're getting this evidence would have to be a lot more controlled to where it's completely sealed. No outside interference can fuck with anything. You got multiple cameras going on at the same time. I always see investigators just put one camera there and then they split up. I would put all my cameras in one room, different angles, just like we do on Phasmophobia.
Tell people.
Just so we're covered all around in this room. So if one thing happens, something gets knocked down, and on one angle it looks very paranormal, there might be another angle that shows, oh, no, this is what happened instead. But I think, and I hate to say this because if ghosts exist, to me, they're just people for the most part.
Yeah.
So I hate to even suggest this, but to be really convinced, I feel like a quote unquote ghost would have to be measured, tested, and repeated under very strict scientific supervision. Like I said, like a controlled environment. That's what it would take for me. Now, I hate EVPs.
I do. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm never convinced by an EVP. And I've seen investigations, I think one we'll talk about later, that just relied the entire time on EVPs. Just that was all they did was just EVPs. And like I said, they either sucked, they did not sound anything like they were saying it sounded like, or they sounded extremely fabricated. I found this this paper that was posted on the University of South Carolina website, and I was obsessed with this person's opinion. So it's titled, "Are Ghosts Real? A Social Psychologist Examines the Evidence." And this was posted in October of 2023, and it's by Barry Markowski. It says, "Never before in history have people recorded so many ghost encounters, thanks in part to mobile phone cameras and microphones. It seems there would be great evidence by now, but scientists don't have it. Instead, there are lots of ambiguous recordings sabotaged by bad lighting and faulty equipment. But popular television shows on ghost hunting convince many viewers that blurry images and emotional reactions are proof enough. As for all the devices ghost hunters use to capture sounds, electrical fields and infrared radiation, they may look scientific, but they're not. Measurements are worthless without some knowledge of the thing you're measuring. When ghost hunters descend on an allegedly haunted location for a night of meandering and measurement, they usually find something they later deem paranormal. It may be a moving door, breeze, a chill, gap in the floorboards, a glow, light entering from outside, electrical fluctuations, old wiring, or bumps and faint voices. Crew in other rooms. Whatever happens, ghost hunters will draw a bullseye around it, interpret that as evidence, and investigate no further. And having watched so many investigations now, I have to agree with that.
What, his name was Barry?
Yeah, Barry Markowski.
Barry, listen to me. If you're single, Jess is looking for a husband right now. I think you two would make such a great couple.
No.
And you got the articles that you two could write to domineer the skepticism of the paranormal. Look, you guys could raise a whole empire, because I like listening to what you were saying. I was like, I felt like you wrote that. I really did. I was like, this sounds like something you would write. Like,
oh my God, I was obsessed.
I'm obsessed.
Honestly, I recommend anybody go out, find that paper and read it, because there was so many other things I wanted to use in this article. But then I was like, well, I'm just going to end up reading the whole freaking article.
Come through, Barry.
But yeah, I could not put it any better, because I think investigators will get a certain piece of evidence, and then instead of digging further into that piece of evidence, they just leave it as is and just say, oh, this is evidence. But why do they stop? Because I have seen people get some compelling stuff before, but it doesn't feel like they dive any deeper into like really investigating that piece of evidence. You know, it just stops when they get the evidence.
It just seems entertainment purposes. And I will agree with you on that. Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think of the paranormal investigation you have watched?
So I'm very excited to talk about, there is a show, it was a documentary style called The Haunting of Fox Hollow Farm. You can find it on Tubi.
It was in 2004, actually, that it came out, right?
Yes, 2004. Edited by Dan T. Hall. So look, one thing that we do here on this show is that we kind of give a breakdown step by step of where they were going, what was happening during the investigations. This one is so convoluted.
It really is.
It is hard to do that. Let me just start off by saying I will not read every single person's name, because there was literally 525,600 investigators involved randomly throughout.
When we were watching the intro to this, they do all the names, and Colin just kept having to pause every second to write one of the new names down.
Every
and it took us like 10, 20 minutes to get through the intro with all the names.
Yeah. Every time I thought it was over, more popped up. But essentially, to kind of break it down for you guys, so in the very beginning of said documentary, they treat it very documentary style. They give you the background of Herb, his life, and everything that led up to the discovery of the bones on the property. There were a couple of things that I found a little interesting. You had Anna. Anna was a private investigator. What I found interesting about Anna was that she chose not to show her face. She was just in darkness the entire time. So a private investigator that decided to remain private. I don't know why that tickled my funny bone, but it really did every time.
Probably because the other private investigator has been anything but private about this.
Correct. Yes. Virgil. Virgil was very open about the things that had kind of happened there. So here's the key thing, right? In the very beginning, they talk about how this was an investigation that took over 6 months. What we have discovered is that what they ended up doing was kind of taking groups of their investigators and putting them there at different times throughout the 6 months and then editing it to look like they were all there at the same time.
Yes. The description of it was extremely deceptive. We thought that there was just this mega investigation team put together from other investigation teams and that they actually stayed on the premises for 6 months. But what it is actually, or what it seems to be, because it is very, very hard to follow.
Yes.
Because they keep going back and forth with this documentary style they want to do, and then they try to do the investigation aspect, and they try to do both at the same time, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
I did notice they got some of the information incorrect, but I don't know if that information was just at the time is what it was being said, because it did come out in 2004.
2004.
They said that there was 5,000 bone fragments on the property and that there were 17 victims. The information that I've gotten, none of them have said that. I've gotten, it's like 10,000 bone fragments.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, I think all they said was like 5 to 6 victims at first.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So I was actually really curious where they pulled the number 17 from.
Yeah.
Just pull that out of their ass and they're like, that sounds like a good number. Nobody knows how many victims there were yet.
Correct. Yeah. And there was also things that they were trying to, I guess, introduce to other paranormal investigators, which, by the way, one of my favorites was the idea of capturing spirit images in the ripples of water.
Yes. Okay, so this voiceover guy, Alexander Hall,
Yep.
he came on and he did this voiceover and he was like, increasingly more common is the practice of capturing spirit images in the ripples of water. And instantly, Colin and I were like, since fucking when?
When?
Like, I don't recall that ever being a common practice.
Not one that I practice. Not any investigator that I've ever investigated with has sat there and was like, do we have any water available? Because we need to take images through it to capture ghosts. Could you make it ripple? Could you do like a Jurassic Park thing and like make it shake?
How convenient that this room already has a pool in it.
Yeah. In which, by the way, they also had like an underwater camera and they were doing this slow motion thing. Now, I don't know if they were pulling it online or stock footage from somewhere else, but every single time they talked about the pool, they had to pull this style of videography to where it was like they would show us just basically like if you were in the pool at the bottom of it, staring up and the ripples of the water. And it was so constant. But the one thing about this show that really truly captured the feel of Fox Hollow Farm was the random like EDM dubstep beat that they would make after, I don't know, either an EVP or after someone talked, to where they're like, the bodies were found. They would have an echo.
We kept doing that. We kept jamming out.
It was such a dubstep.
I remember it more prominent at the beginning because they did this kind of montage of all these news reports. And you would hear the news anchor say something like, human remains were discovered. And for some reason, they would take that and repeat it, like, and make an echo and distort the voice. So it would be like, human remains were discovered. Human remains were discovered.
We're discovered. And it was just this like beat.
Yeah.
And they kept doing it. Then they started doing it with EVPs, like, was completely random, but it was through the entire thing.
My number one critique of this whole thing, and I said it to you at the time, was it really seemed like they compromised substance for style.
1000%.
They were adding all these unnecessary effects, and I could see like they were trying to make it look creepy and stuff, but the whole thing was a mess.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
The way it would go back and forth. And I've seen other shows, other paranormal investigation shows, do that kind of thing where they go back and forth from the investigation and the history perfectly fine. But for some reason, there was a huge struggle on that.
Yeah. So earlier on, we had talked about an episode of a show that used a lot of EVPs as their evidence, and they used a lot of EVP evidence. And here's my thing, right? Putting the EVP evidence aside, what we see in a lot of ghost shows is that you know who's in the room, right? Take Ghost Adventures, for example. You know you've got your 3 main people, and then you've got maybe 1 to 2 camera holders. You can at least maybe account for 5 of them, and that's it. And they tell you where they are. Unfortunately, in this documentary style, they wouldn't tell you what room they were in. And they would say, oh, we got an EVP. I don't know, as a viewer, how many people were in that room. I know nothing of the context. And it's just this random EVP. So, for example, like in the apartment upstairs, they caught "Go in my closet, you're so fucked up, turn off." Out in the woods, they were capturing cackles, "Let go, back up" with Chuck, just kind of this random stuff. And then Joe LeBlanc came into the picture and he showed this photo he put on his Mac computer there so everyone could kind of see it. And now he claims that in preparation for that photo, it was the idea of he had basically felt that someone was watching him in the woods and he, took out his camera, took a photo, and there is a hooded figure. He says it's a man with a gray sweatshirt, hooded, standing there. And I tried to look for this photo online. I did not find it because that was kind of my main questions. Because unfortunately, what the, I guess, producers of the editors of what they did, and Jess can explain it better than I can. Please do.
I'm so glad you brought this up because I
Yeah,
almost forgot
yeah.
about it. Yeah. Okay, we rewound this part a couple times
Multiple times. Yeah.
and rewatched it because there is a major editing fuck up in this moment when he's showing the picture. So he opens the laptop, he points to the screen, he points to the picture, and he says, "See right here, you can see a hooded figure." And then the edit cuts to just the picture itself. And where the hooded figure isn't actually where he pointed to in the picture.
Yeah, Joe pointed to the top left, and then they zoomed in on the center. And as it
Yeah.
zoomed in, they had lightened, and you clearly see this figure that is getting lighter and lighter and lighter as the camera processes.
Yeah.
But it was not where Joe was pointing.
It looks like something that was done in post. It feels like they asked Joe to send them that picture for this documentary investigation, whatever. And they saw it and they're like, okay, I can't see what he's talking about. So they made their own. And I thought that was shady as fuck.
They didn't put it in the right spot either. Like
They didn't even
literally
put it.
stuck it.
I mean,
yeah.
not only did it seem like they tampered the evidence in post, but they didn't even do it correctly because they put the hooded figure in an area that Joe wasn't pointing to
At all. Like not
at
even near
all.
it.
It was awful.
And it was noticeable, at least like to us, it was very noticeable. And we
Mhm.
even went back and rewatched that clip just to make sure that's where Joe
Yeah.
was pointing. And
I think Colin actually, I think you caught that, which was such
Yeah.
a good catch.
And it was so very bizarre. We had the psychic there by the name of Marlene Isaacs. She was kind of walking around giving her impression of certain things. And look, I mean, in all honesty, she was not, I didn't really particularly see anything wrong. Once again, I do want to stress that to us, it was not the investigators that were the issue with this. It was the editing that was
was.
done and the styling of this. And I will say, one of my favorite things about Marlene was that she was in the apartment and she's sitting down and she was like, "I have a question. I'm going to ask a question. I don't want to be rude. I don't want anyone to take offense at the question, but there's a question. I'm going to ask this question. Can I ask the question?"
Just ask the question.
And then she doesn't ask the question.
Yeah, she does.
They cut to Robert Graves like saying something.
I forgot about that.
I thought to myself, "Oh, they're gonna cut back to her asking this question." No, they never
No,
did.
they just move the fuck on.
We never know.
You never hear the question. The question never happens.
Yeah, to this day, I want to know what the question is, Marlene. I am dying to know. Email me, us, whatever. Just get a hold of me.
Yeah.
I need to know what the question is.
Because they let her build that up and then it cuts
that is
to something
yeah.
completely different and we're just left with, what the fuck was the question?
Yeah. And that is not an exaggeration. Like, she got really hyped up and really
Mhm.
because she was talking about how she didn't want to insult anyone. And honestly, I think it was a question about sexuality that she was possibly going to ask because the way she hyped herself up. But then we never got the question. So I don't know. I'm speculating.
Part was so funny. We laughed so
Oh,
hard.
it
Just
was-
the immediate redirect.
yeah.
Like, why didn't they
it was
just
very
edit her
bizarre.
not saying she was going to ask a question if they weren't going to let us hear the question?
Yeah. And then they ended up going into the lower bar area to where not only is it the lower bar, but it's also where the changing rooms are. There were two investigators down there that heard a rattling. They had suspected there are saloon doors that go into the changing room, and they kind of played with them and sat there and stated that it was the exact same sound that they were hearing. There was an investigator, his name was Chris Lean. It was really weird. There was this moment to where, here's the thing, right? It's pitch black. They have a night vision camera. When you have a night vision camera and you're looking into it, you could still see that it's on you because it has that green glow to it. It shows Chris like shaking the saloon doors, and the girl that he's with is like, yep, that's the sound we heard. And then he very weirdly looks into the camera and smirks. Like he had some dirty secret that he was just like,
I
and
remember that.
it was unsettling, to be honest with you. It
Yeah.
weirded me out.
But again, my issue with that part was the editing. Because I guess they got kind of a recording of the sound. They played like him doing that twice for some reason. It was
Correct.
very weird.
Yeah.
And then, sometimes like just auditory, they would play the sound, but you couldn't tell which one you were listening to. They didn't specify because they did sound a little different, I guess. No, did they? Like one was like really quiet, I think. But I don't even know if they were playing the sound they heard or they did like their weird audio editing shit that they do throughout so much of it.
Yeah, they kept kind of overlaying like EVPs, and then they would cut to another scene to where it's like, wait, where did that EVP come from? There was they were doing this other thing as well to where they would have the narrator talk, Alexander Hall, and they'd be like, someone saw a shadow figure in the corner, and then they would zoom in all the way onto the wall. It was like, what are we looking at?
Yeah. That's the thing. They would talk about evidence, but instead of using actual evidence, they would make these very artistic style shots.
Yeah.
And it's like, are we supposed to be convinced right now that you actually got evidence? Because all I'm seeing right now is style. Like,
yeah. They reported like cold spots above the pump room door. There was a swinging light that was happening, but once again, it was literally like 5 seconds of this light that had a slow swinging motion to it, but we had no context. When was this recorded? Like, when did it start happening? It was literally 5 seconds. And then they went to the pool area and they literally spent the entire time in the pool just discussing EVPs. They had 2 EVP specialists there. Once again, this kind of gives me the idea that the EVP specialist went to Fox Hollow Farm as a duo by themselves. There's no one else around them. And that is because, like I said, the way this whole thing was shot, you can kind of tell some people wearing long sleeves. There are other people wearing shorts.
What's so irritating, they don't even go in chronological order.
No, not at all.
They go back and forth. It's so hard to follow like what's actually happening in it.
Yeah.
It's just a mess.
I will say, like, for me, I had highlighted some of the EVPs that I found interesting, at least because there were certain things. Because when we watch this type of stuff, as we all know, they sometimes put subtitles at the bottom. And I do feel that can be very leading, as Jess says. So there are times where I'm not looking. I kind of do this thing to where I will listen to it. I have my headphones on and I'll like close my eyes or put my head down so I could hear it. There was one EVP where it says, "You dare come to my house." To me, I heard that very clearly.
See, but this is my issue with all that EVP evidence. Like I said earlier about EVPs, you had both ends of the spectrum when it came to it. Like, so you got these EVPs that they were saying, oh, they said this, but you can't hear that at all.
Yeah.
But then they got EVPs where you could hear somebody like crystal clear.
Yeah.
And there was nothing like in the middle. And to me, that was kind of suspicious that there was no middle ground there.
Yeah, we have no context of who was in the room.
Yeah, and that's another thing too, especially after figuring out about that picture and seeing that they clearly edited that in post. How are we not supposed to think that they didn't do that with other evidence?
Yeah, to me, it's like they focused on different things that was very odd. They were in the woods and they found a small little bottle of Vicks Vapor Rub, and they focused on this for what felt like forever. It was probably like 3 minutes, but they were like, Vicks Vapor Rub, what is this? Oh, how did this get here? And they're like, what would Herb need Vicks Vapor Rub for? And I'm like, I don't know, poppers? Like, and then Vicky Graves sat there and stated that if there was decomposing body in the woods, Vicks Vapor Rub go underneath on the upper lip, underneath the nose, so you don't smell that. And I was like, you guys have had this house for how long and there's still like a cool bottle of Vicks Vapor Rub hanging out in the woods? I don't know if that stuff expires. But once again, they focused on this. It was almost as if they were trying to solve some sort of mystery that wasn't really a mystery.
Yeah.
In this documentary, they had spoken to the man and wife who were campers in Canada who found Herb's body. And they did report that it was on a sand dune. His arms were spread out. It was pristine. There were two dead seagulls that he had strangled. I guess they were gay. I'm not sure how he knew that, but they were laid out like arrows pointed towards the water. And they were trying to lead this idea that it was almost, in a sense, I guess, ritualistic. Like, is that how Herb is able to go back to his property? Because in the paranormal community, there is the idea that if you don't die there, how are you getting there? I found that interesting because it kind of gave us a little bit more to go off of. But yeah, other than that, it was not worth it, folks.
Just to let everyone listening know, Colin and I also watched the Ghost Adventures episode for Fox Hollow Farm. So we recorded our whole breakdown and review for it. Now, as always, we had a lot to say about Mr. Zach Bagans and his investigation, but we're really trying to keep our episodes shorter. With that said, if you're interested, that segment is available on our Patreon right now. And if for some unforeseen reason it isn't, it will be very soon. Thank you guys again for your support and hope you enjoy it.
Fox Hollow Farm has reports of apparitions, voices, physical encounters, and unexplained sensations. Is it the variety of reported experiences that makes the haunting seem more credible, or does having so many different claims make you more skeptical?
I do think having so many different claims does make me more skeptical, just because I would prefer if they just focused on a single anomaly and just really focused on figuring that one anomaly out. Instead of being like, oh, this cold spot, oh, this EVP, oh, this EMF, oh, this REM pod. But another thing that plays into why this makes me more skeptical is because places that only have like one anomaly spoken of, they wouldn't get any attention. Have you ever heard of a haunted location that only has one singular anomaly? Because I never have.
No.
Never. Fox Hollow Farm, like, it's been featured on numerous paranormal television networks and podcasts like this one. When a location becomes famous, it kind of creates like a feedback loop, if that makes sense. Because visitors don't enter, most visitors at least, don't enter with a blank slate. They enter with a subconscious checklist of everything they've heard people talking about, whether it was the graves, whether it was something that was said on Ghost Adventures, whatever. There's a huge long list of all these paranormal things that have apparently happened at this location. So I feel like there's always something for their brain to be looking out for because they have all those stories in their head instead of just focusing on one anomaly. You know, if they don't see one, they're going to be looking out for another thing. So for example, if they don't see the man in red, instead they're going to listen for a whisper. If they don't hear a whisper, they wait to get the feeling of dread that is said to be had. It's like hyper priming. It's guaranteeing that people come onto this location expecting one thing or another. There's an endless list of things to look out for. I think it actually hinders the believability of a haunting because there's too many anomalies to really determine what's true and what's not. And like you said, paranormal stuff, it's a game of telephone. It's all hearsay. And I feel like even if there are real paranormal things happening at a location, even if it's just one thing, I feel like naturally other stories will start to get added to that, which does the location a disservice because you have this one real thing happening, but then, you know, they got to make this place more haunted. So this story pops up and this story pops up and this story pops up. And all of a sudden the real thing that might be happening that you might actually be able to determine is being drowned in all of these other pieces of evidence that have no backing and is just like word of mouth shit. Does that make sense? Am I making sense here or am I sounding like a lunatic?
To be honest with you, I'm a little confused because at first you said that you would want one anomaly, but then there aren't locations that have one anomaly. So maybe if there were more anomalies, but they'll get drowned because it's a little, I'm a little confused about like.
When aren't you confused by my intelligent words?
What's an anomaly?
Okay, so an anomaly is whatever you took from that. My overall answer is I think having an endless list of experiences actually is a hindrance to a haunted location and makes it seem less credible than having maybe one anomaly that's really present and is actually a legit anomaly, but instead of focusing in on this anomaly and maybe getting evidence that really backs it up, your brain, when you're on the location investigating, your brain is going to get separated to all these other stories. A lot of stories that are from just hearsay, not evidence, you know?
Yeah.
So it's going to cause that one really good anomaly to drown in all of that nonsense. Are you still confused? I feel like you might still be confused.
I haven't been confused. 100% understand everything that you're saying. Like, I get it. I do. I don't know. I think if there were like a handful of experiences that happen sporadically, like over time, that could be explained. But to this day, Fox Hollow Farm, the property is still very much active. There's so much evidence that personally cannot be explained, from valid EVPs to meters going off when there's no electricity to set it off, to footsteps and voices still to this day physically being heard. So for me, I do think that all of these kind of different claims lend it more credence. I think to me, with all of these claims, it's more of a solid foundation. And absolutely, you know, in the sense of what you're speaking, I do think that maybe if they took one or two of these claims and said, let's really focus on just these two and back burner the rest, I do think that would be a little beneficial for certain things. But to me, I love all these claims because, like I said, they're still happening today.
Yes, it's more entertaining. Of course, you want to go to a location that has all these crazy claims. What I'm saying is that just because it has a bunch of crazy claims, that doesn't make it more credible. But yeah, that's me. But your opinion is very valid as well. It just isn't correct like mine. But with that said, even though she doesn't want to, I'm going to drag her in here. Yeah, or Miss Producer Lady. I just want to know how you feel about this location, because it is very different than the ones we've covered in the past.
It is. It's dark. And I would say it's almost as dark as some other ones we've done, and possibly even future ones. It's a terrible story experience, and everything that happened, it's absolutely devastating what happened on this property. I'd like to think that the spirits have moved on. You know me. I'm very much about that.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'd rather those victims found peace than
very much
the idea of them being trapped there. That's a horrible, especially if they're trapped there with Herb.
Yeah, exactly. I hope he's burning in hell. But it's definitely a location I would personally love to go and investigate. I will say that. Very intrigued by it.
Yeah.
Would you take a swim?
No way I would swim. No way.
Would you swim? Would you take a dip in the pool?
No way.
No, I would.
I would go to the pool. I would go to the pool area and absolutely just try to talk to them if they are there, try to help them move on in a way. That's what I would try to do personally.
I mean, that would be very noble of you.
I would try to have an experience. I would try to kind of be this conduit, just myself being a gay man and being in this pool and seeing what could potentially happen. I want to know. So yeah, I would totally take a dip in the pool.
Well, maybe that'll be a future investigation one day.
I would love to meet Robert Graves. I think he is awesome.
I mean, if the graves were allowed on the property, I don't know how all that works. It's not like a Waverly or like a Lake Shawnee. These people live there. So I don't know how to go about. I wouldn't even know how to go about getting onto the property with their permission. But
that's fair.
I guess if they ever listen to this, send us an invite.
Twice a year, Robert, he allows his home to be investigated.
Cool.
And then from my research of Robert, he is very open to people investigating because he kind of has this thirst for knowledge of what, everyone kind of thinks. I did try to find contact information, and I unfortunately couldn't find anything.
I gathered that so much from what I've seen of the interviews of Rob. He's got like a whole freaking box just full of all of the court documents and like newspaper articles and stuff like that. And you can't blame him. He lives on the property,
He's really gone out of his way to also go online. Robert Graves is procuring a lot of items that were original to the house when it sat vacant for a little bit. There was a lot of vandalism. And so he is going online and he's always searching for items that were original to the house. I know one of the items that he procured was the original faucet handles that go into the Herb's bathroom that were stolen. I hesitate to use the word obsessed because I don't know if there's good, I don't know. Obsessed sounds a little, but he is a big fan sounds worse, doesn't it?
Yeah, don't say he's like a fan of
he's not a fan of Herb's. Yeah, it's just that he is really into what happened there as far as trying to research the truth and keeping it original.
I feel like his curiosity. I mean, I know he wasn't interested in the paranormal, but I don't know if he had any interest in true crime. I don't think that's ever been established. All I've heard him say is that before this, he had no interest in the paranormal. But I've never heard him say, I wasn't interested in true crime. So if you're living on a location that is now your home, your family's home, and it has this history, I feel like any natural history buff or somebody who is into researching true crime, like you're living in a gold mine. If that's the case, I can understand it from that perspective, because I think I would want to know everything too. I am now living in this home. I don't want any surprises. I don't want to go use Herb's bathroom and then find human remains in there.
Yeah.
I would want to know everything. So I don't fault him for that.
Yeah.
Whatsoever.
I agree.
I've read like people find it kind of odd how into it he is. It's like it's his home though. You know, his family lives there.
I mean, it's just the same as when people buy celebrity homes or homes that were on TV shows. It's just a fascination, I think, more than anything.
Yeah.
But I also feel that Rob's kind of gone the extra mile, you know? I mean, like, he has the whole stack of every newspaper clip, video clip of whatever he could find on Herb. He has. And to me, it's like, if you were setting up your home to be a museum-esque true crime type situation, I could kind of get that. But it's for his own personal collection, which is where I tend to think it kind of dips a little bit into the oddity of it. But at the same time, I do understand the idea of living in a home that right now is pretty infamous. I do think Rob is searching for any hint of the truth. I think Rob is an armchair detective just like any of us.
Yeah, it's ongoing, you know,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of things up in the air right now, like especially if Herb actually did all this himself.
Yeah, there is a theory.
It is the biggest. There's lots of theories.
There's a theory. He didn't do it alone.
There's lots of theories. But yeah, I think his curiosity about it is definitely warranted. But with that, any shout outs? You got any shout outs?
It's so funny that you say that. Actually, I do. I do have a shout out.
I had no idea. You didn't tell us in advance or anything that you had a shout out.
So this was presented to me by one of my coworkers. Katie came up to me just the other day and she had said that her sister is a big listener of our show. And so her name is Megan. Hi, Megan.
Hi, Megan.
Thank you so much. I just want to tell the story of what Katie told me, which was it's endearing and it's lovely, is that you guys had gone out to eat at like a Mexican restaurant, family dinner. Everyone's chit-chatting this and that, except you. You have your earbuds in listening to the show. And then you kept taking out the earbud and saying, you listen to what Jess said, listen to what Colin said. And you were just kind of like not engaging with the family meal time, but engaging in the podcast. And that, thank you.
I feel awesome about that, but also a little guilty because I feel like I deprived somebody of family dinner time with my stupid words. But no, that is so sweet.
Very sweet.
That is so sweet. I love that. I hope she continues listening and maybe not at family dinners. Maybe it would be better to be present for those, but
yeah,
but any other time.
Megan, get out there and tell all of your friends who are interested in what we do and spread us around like a disease. Like the Black Plague, just put it out there. That's terrible.
I don't want to be spread like the Black Plague. Nobody looks at the Black Plague and is like, that was an awesome time.
I do. I want to be spread like butter.
Spread like butter. Yeah,
butter.
That's much better. But I guess that wraps it up for us. So, Bree, tell everyone what they need to know.
And with that, we leave Fox Hollow Farm behind, but the questions have a way of following us home. Now we want to hear from you. Are you siding with the skeptic, the believer, or are you somewhere in between, still searching for answers where history and the unexplained collide? Send us your thoughts, theories, and your own believer or skeptic stories at paranormalbspodcast@gmail.com. Because sometimes hearing a ghost story is one thing, living through one is something else entirely. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and you can listen wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, keep an open mind, question everything, and remember that the answers we're looking for aren't always the ones we expect to find.
Before we turn on the spirit box, if you think you may be related to one of the unidentified victims from Fox Hollow Farm, meaning you had a male relative go missing in the mid-1980s to the mid-1990s, you can help investigators by submitting a DNA sample. A simple cheek swab could help finally identify a victim and bring closure to your family. To learn more, contact the Hamilton County Coroner's Office, 317-770-4415.
I would like to take this moment to dedicate this episode to a very good friend of mine, Glenn. For those of you who don't know, I have a very personal connection almost to this case. Back in 2014, my friend Glenn was tragically taken away. He was murdered by another gay man right across the street from me. I unfortunately know very much what it's like to not know. Glenn wasn't found for well over a week. And during that time, we were out there every day speaking to the news, speaking to the community, hanging up missing person photos, the whole 9 yards. And that not knowing is one of the hardest things that anyone, whether you're friends or family, has to go through. I really feel for these families, even for the families of people whose sons and friends who have been identified, because knowing what has happened, there's not always a lot of closure. And I have spent many years, I guess in a sense, struggling with that closure. So I do encourage you to hug your friends, hug your family members, and let them know that you love them. But we want to dedicate this episode to Glenn, who I know is up there looking down and literally with his thick ass country accent is cheering us on 100%. He was a big supporter of everything that I did, every idea that came to my head and my heart. He was always there to support, and there's never any judgment. And I know that's exactly what he's doing. So Glenn, this one's for you, buddy. I miss you.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening. Thanks for listening. Thank you for listening. Goodbye. Goodbye. Goodbye.